Welcome back, USC Coliseum Chronicles live on the Voice of College Football. I'm Terrence Holton, joined alongside Casey Kasliner. It's a great day here. I'm back in Los Angeles. Casey's in the Bay Area right now. We're going to do a couple things. We're going to do a position breakdown of the DL, talk about some of those guys. I think it's going to be a lot better, as well as the first thing we're going to talk about, USC lands 5-star tight end Mark Bowman out of I almost said Montford, Mater Dei. Casey, what is this addition for this USC class? It's already phenomenal, class of 2025.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, you add to an already stacked group, and I think also it was kind of abrupt because we expected, Bowman to make a decision somewhat soon, but he just kind of out of nowhere says, I'm committed to USC. And of course, like you mentioned, Mater Dei guy, that's yet another Mater Dei commit from USC. They have a handful of those in the 2026 class now. Has a lot of size, 6'5", 225. He's I believe the number one tight end in the class,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he's such a physical player, great hands. We've seen a lot of USC receivers lately, like Jacoby Lane, have those great hands. So you bring in another guy who can connect well with whoever's playing quarterback. And I mean, I'm just excited to see the Hassan Longstreet, Mark Bowman connection in a couple years from now, and just how that chemistry can develop. It's huge. I mean, in a week too, where Oregon loses a bit of recruiting prowess, USC capitalizes and adds a huge name.
We got to talk about, sorry to cut you off, we got to talk about all-time social media team post from USC, the Anchorman Club. I don't know about you, Casey, journalism major, Anchorman 2 and Anchorman. That's part of the reason I am who I am.
Yeah. I mean, and it's Will Ferrell, exactly. It's a USC guy.
Yeah, no, but just kind of echoing what all you said, it is a massive addition to this already fantastic class. Bowman is a vertical threat. He moves quick for a tight end. I believe Steve Wiltfong, it's Greg Biggins, 24/7, compared him to Mason Taylor, the LSU tight end, I guess he's a Jets tight end now. This is a fantastic addition. He could end up as one of the highest rated tight ends out of California in quite some time. I think last decade, if I'm not mistaken. It's a fantastic addition. We've talked a lot about how this upcoming class, it's stacked really head to toe position-wise. Everywhere you look, there's a phenomenal player that they have recruited: running back, cornerback, defensive line, offensive line. Bowman just adds to that. It shows how great this recruiting class has been because it's super well-rounded. And the last thing I want to talk about with him, I mean, it's just shutting down the California recruiting trail. It's massive. Obviously, a long way to go till he gets on campus. However, one of the reasons that Elijah Griffin, Xavier Griffin decommitted a while back, 2 weeks at this point, was because he wanted to take other visits. USC doesn't want their commits to take other visits. Understandably so. Once you get them committed, you want to keep them there. This is a sign that, as you mentioned, he kind of abruptly committed to Bowman, that is. I don't think he's going to take that many more visits. Maybe he'll take some. Yeah. But it's a sign that USC is a clear favorite to get him on campus, no matter what else happens, no matter how much money SEC. I know Georgia was involved in his recruiting a lot. However much money or whatever they throw at him.
Yeah, I know he has a recruiting visit officially with Texas in a couple days. So I don't think he does that probably. And also, like, to your point about tight ends, I mean, we've seen USC kind of underutilize the tight ends in recent years. Lake McCree got a little bit of a bigger role last year, but he also dealt with injuries. But look, even like around the Big Ten, Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, those two guys were game changers on their team. And Penn State,
I'll throw another one. I'll throw another tight end in there. Kenyon Seek at Oregon. He's going to be great this year.
Yeah, I mean, they had Terrence Ferguson as well, who maybe wasn't quite as good, but, he
was a second pick, though.
Yeah, but I mean, relative to Warren and Loveland, because those guys could control the offense. And I think, like, even if USC, for whatever reason, if and when Bowman comes on campus, if the receiving group maybe isn't as strong, you have a guy like that who can be your safety valve. And we know it's probably going to be very strong just with who USC's been able to grab in this class. So yeah, it's huge, and excited to see where they go with this class even further.
100%. But Casey, let's move on. This is going to be a sort of short episode. Apologies for that. Once Casey and I nail down our schedules, we've both started summer internships this week, so we've got to nail down our schedules a little bit more. But once we get that going, more consistent time and longer episodes. But Casey, let's talk about the USC defensive line. We've previewed this a little bit in previous weeks because I'm going to speak for both of us here. We think it's going to be a fantastic group, arguably even the best on the team.
Yeah, I'd say so for sure. I mean, you have a group of experienced guys who have been under D'Anton Lynn's system now for a season. And I believe USC last season only had 15 sacks or 21 sacks as a group.
Sounds right. It wasn't that much. It was, I mean, we've talked about, quarterback pressure and stopping the run before.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, it was pretty dry. Like, there were certain games where USC was barely pressuring the quarterback. I think you could even look at that Michigan game where USC is playing against, Alex Orji. Yeah. I mean, it was pretty bad. But now you have a group of guys, and just to throw out some names, guys like Anthony Lucas. He was a physical monster last season. And unfortunately, the USC D-line dealt with a lot of injuries last year. I mean, the whole defense did. But Anthony Lucas was a big part of that. They bring in Keyshawn Silver, transfer. You have Jamal Jarrett you could work into there. You have Devin Tompkins, Cam Fountain, who's going to take a big leap probably. He's earned the playing time. And then even like Braylon Shelby. I believe he had a sack in the Texas A&M game. He, of course, has a lot of size, just a very smart player. It's a really good group of D linemen that you have depth in as well.
Yeah, it's a fantastic group. I very much think that the depth is their biggest strength because, last year, Anthony Lucas was having a fantastic season early on, obviously goes down with that injury, and you see a lot less pressure on the defensive line. I'll even throw in Bear Alexander, obviously sitting out the rest of the year. They got significantly less pressure. They stopped filling those holes a lot less. You got guys now behind Anthony Lucas, Jakeem Stewart, the 5-star. And on the other side, obviously you mentioned Cameron Fountain. He was fantastic and is a true freshman. Easily, I would argue definitely top 100, I'd say arguably top 50 freshman season in college football last year. He was fantastic. I think this defensive line is going to be phenomenal. And that's just on the outside. Working on the inside, I mentioned Bear Alexander. Once he went out, USC had a real problem of depth at that just nose tackle, that filling the gaps position. Now you have Jaw Jarrett and Keyshawn Silver, two big dudes, who are basically two of us. So I think that is how you take that next step in the Big Ten. That's how you finally start really plugging those holes. Because, obviously at UCLA, D'Anton Lynn's run defense was phenomenal. It was the best aspect of the defense. Obviously last year at USC, it was fine. It was much better than 2023 and 2022, but it was still just fine. I think this is the year they really take that leap, and they're phenomenal.
Yeah, and you got to remember too, like Eric Henderson and D'Anton Lynn didn't really have like a full year to kind of work with these guys, especially when you have injuries as well. And so you bring in, a couple of solid guys. I mean, you could throw in, you mentioned the true freshman, Jakeem Stewart. You also have Cass Jacobson, who's going to be a true freshman. I know he probably won't play much, but you also have a handful of redshirt freshmen as well, Carlton Jones, Elijah Newby. And I think just having a coach like D'Anton Lynn, who is so focused on pressure and making the defense better. I mean, we saw him do it at UCLA. And I think having that now elevated for, a full season, now you're going on the second one, especially with Eric Henderson. And he clearly, he coached Aaron Donald. He's a guy that players love to play for.
Sorry. Yeah. Did you see a picture of Aaron Donald and Jakeem Stewart the other day?
I did. I was sick.
Love it. I love it. I mean, it's just showing it's who you can get with your recruits. It's who these coaches can get with the players. You're learning from the best of the best. I would argue Aaron Donald, best defensive lineman of our generation in the NFL, pretty easily, right?
Best defensive player of all time, I'd say maybe in the NFL.
That's maybe a bold statement. I don't know. Lawrence Taylor throw it in there. But anyways, it's just showing that you want to come here. You want to play for these guys. Look who I've coached in the league. Look at all this stuff. This defensive line is going to be fantastic. And with that being said, Casey, I want to ask you, where do you think they stack up amongst the rest of the Big Ten?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this, I'd say at least a month ago at this point. Oregon has a good D-line. I think easily, though, USC is in the top 4, top 3. I don't know do you agree with that off the bat?
Yeah, I probably would. I feel like you got to put obviously Ohio State and Michigan lost a lot of their top guys. Obviously, Mason Graham, Tyleik Williams, Kenneth Grant, all those guys. You still probably would put at least Ohio State above USC, and I'll put Oregon too. You know, they also lost guys like Derek Harmon, but still got Mateo Uiagalelei. I would put them third. Do you think that's fair?
I think that's fair.
On the Big Ten?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you combine that with, we've talked about the offense being easily top 3, top 4, in that range. I mean, so does that mean, I guess like when you put it all together, where do you see, I know it's more of a big picture question, but like, do you think,
are you going to ask me where do I see USC as in the Big Ten?
No, no. I think my question is, do you think my actual question is, do you think the D line being improved from last year to now gives USC the edge to, because USC's offense wasn't really the issue last year. It was obviously the injuries on defense, and there was
wasn't fantastic.
Yeah,
though.
The O line was the issue.
Yeah.
But like play skill wise, like no issue at all. I'd say. I mean, obviously, Miller Moss playing most of the first part of the season, and that didn't work out. Do you think the D line being this good gives USC enough to make a CFP bid? Is my question.
Ooh, a CFP bid, because we'll say 10-2 gets them in. How about that? Do you think 10-2 gets them in?
I think it does.
Yeah. 10-2 loss to Oregon, Notre Dame. That's what I'll say, and I think that's very much on the table. I would say yes, because I'm just looking at the schedule. Physicality wise, I think the only offensive lines that stack up with this USC defensive line, I'll throw 3 in here actually. I was going to say 2, but Michigan, Notre Dame, and Oregon. I think those are the only 3 that can stack up physicality wise against this USC defensive line. So if you're looking at that, that's at least 10, I'd say 9 to 10 games where you have a better defensive line than the opposing team has offensive line, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
I mean, I think we're going to see, obviously we've talked about it a lot. The QB pressure last year was terrible. It wasn't good. They could not get to the quarterback. And, injury was a lot of that. We've talked about Eric Gentry, obviously Anthony Lucas earlier. Lots of problems injury-wise, and just other things are attributed to, them falling down, them not getting that pressure on the quarterback. Now you have that depth. You have more experience. Obviously we talked about Cameron Fountain. He was getting a lot of snaps as a true freshman. 2 years under his belt now. I think this is where we see him break out.
100%. I mean, physicality is a huge part of it. And you mentioned some of these guys are really huge. Like Anthony Lucas is just a huge guy. Yeah, wrong Anthony. Anthony Lucas is just a huge guy. I mean, he's a freak of nature. Can overpower offensive lines. And so, I think on one hand, before we saw USC recruiting guys who maybe looked good on paper, like a Bear Alexander, who is a physical threat. But the pure strength of some of these guys they have is so much better than a guy like that. And so I think that's huge. You also lose I'm blanking on his name. Forget it. I was what's that?
Gavin Meyer?
Gavin Meyer. Sorry.
Okay,
yeah, Gavin Meyer. And he dealt with injuries last year, but I thought he was very good when he was on the field. But I think that who they've been able to supplement has been huge. And I think, I really like the approach of the D-line, because you're not necessarily bringing in 5 transfers, but you're bringing in guys who, you recruited a couple years ago in some cases and have worked and developed under the program. Now, granted, it's only been 1 year under Eric Henderson, but if we looked at that projected D-line, Cameron Fountain's only going to be a junior. Devin Tompkins, has.
I was going to say, we haven't even mentioned Devin Tompkins. He is primed for a breakout year. I don't know if you've seen some of the video from practice. He looks fantastic.
Yeah, he does. You add in Keyshawn Silver, who is a transfer but has a lot of experience. So the point is, I mean, yes, not all these guys have played a lot of years under Eric Henderson, because he's only been at USC only one season. Same with D'Anton Lynn, but those coaches have the experience to bring those guys to their pinnacle. And again, I think we could say the same thing about the offensive line. There's only a couple of transfers on that, and chemistry is a big part of that, and developing a line with those guys. And so I think the trenches are overall
the trenches is where football is made. Yeah.
And especially considering that USC has had really good running back play, at least all of our tenure at USC. I mean, I whether or not they're underutilized or not. And so we know that USC, they're a West Coast offense, passing friendly team, but the trenches are huge for this team, especially in a Big Ten conference that's so physical. And we're going to see how that shapes out with the D-line in particular, because USC has not been touted very positively for its defense, rightfully, the past couple of years. But the culture is changing. I mean, the culture has changed in recruiting. It's changed, I feel like, with the identity of this team, and defensively with the whole new coaching staff from last season, having a year under their belts in the Big Ten, and now trying to make that jump to the CFP.
Yeah, look, I completely agree. I mean, this whole shift towards more physicality and more focus on the trenches, it's important for playing in the Big Ten. It's a completely different conference from the Pac-12. Obviously, we both grew up on Pac-12 football where, it's 11:30 p.m. and these teams are running and gunning and it's a 50-50 game. It's awesome, but it's not the Big Ten. It's different. It's not. That's what USC was in the Pac-12. They can't be that in the Big Ten. They just can't. So this focus on the defensive line, this focus on the trenches is going to be so key just going forward. I'm going to look 10 years in the future. Obviously, college football is almost certainly going to be really different in 10 years. But that is what the identity of the team is going to have to be in this Big Ten. Casey, not different subject, still the defensive line. I want to bring up, we've talked about Eric Gentry, Kamari Ramsey. Those are kind of the leaders of the linebackers, the defensive backs, and just leaders on this defense. What about the defensive line? Who do you think is going to be a leader and will be that overall best player? Because, I mean, obviously those two are the best players in those two rooms, but also they're leaders on the field.
I got to go Anthony Lucas, honestly. He's a veteran player. He had a great season last year. Again, I don't know how vocal he is necessarily on the team. We'll find that out. I'll be at practices, and then I'll be able to observe that. But I think Anthony Lucas, I think he's the guy that's, if he can stay healthy, he could be one of the best D linemen in the country. Like, seriously, he has the physical traits. He has the skills. But how about you? It's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree with Lucas. That's probably the right one. He's been here the longest. He's the oldest, or not the oldest, but one of the oldest guys. He also is arguably the best. I mean, we'll see about how Jarrett and Silver do. I'd like to throw Cameron Fountain in there, though. Obviously, really young guy. He's going to be a true sophomore this upcoming year. But the talent is so undeniable that I feel like I'm not going to say forced because that sounds bad, but he could be in a position where he takes over as that leader because others see his talent. They see how good he is. They want to see him lead. They want him to be that leader, that defensive stalwart right on that line. I think it could be Fountain, but I am inclined to agree with you. That's probably Lucas.
Yeah, Fountain had 4.5 tackles for loss last year in only 8 games. So, I mean, that's as a true freshman. So, I mean, what is he going to do as a sophomore? That's a honestly eye-popping stats, and he had 2 sacks. So, I mean, it's a huge player to have and dominating the middle there for USC. Yeah.
So we've talked about all 3 sets of the defensive not the defensive line, the defense as a whole, DBs, linebackers, defensive line. Now I want to open it up further to the rest of the Big Ten. We've definitely talked about this a little bit. Where do you see this defense after we've broken all of this down? Who's going to be there? Who's going to be a key contributor? Where do you see this defense ranking in the Big Ten?
Again, I think, I mean, if we're really looking at each position, right? We've talked about each one in depth. USC's linebacker core very strong. It's been like that even when their defense has been bad, because you even have like a guy like Mason Cobb coming over and he's been solid, but he's gone now, so I digress. And then you have the secondary, Kamari Ramsey. You lose Jalen Smith, you lose a couple of guys, but still, I mean, you have the identity there. And then we mentioned the D line. I think top 5. The Big Ten?
Yeah. I'd say definitely top 5. I think it's probably a toss-up in the 4 because, Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, they're all really good. I think you got to put 4. It's still fantastic, but I think you got to put 4 because there is a certain level of unproven compared to those other teams which have very proven defenses. And I think they're going to be phenomenal. Like, let me make that very clear. I think they're going to be phenomenal. I think if USC makes the CFP, it will be because of the defense. It won't be because of the offense. I would say probably fourth. I don't know if you can put them over Penn State, Oregon, and Ohio State.
Well, you also got to remember Indiana too, because Indiana had a really solid defense last year, and they have some departures. But I mean, they're known for the offense, of course. But I don't know.
I will disrespect Indiana. No, I'm not gonna argue that USC. I mean, I'll throw Illinois in there too because they're a fantastic team. No, I'm gonna disrespect Indiana. I don't think Indiana was that good last year, so I think those stats were fudged. DC, I mean, they play no one out of conference once again. I don't know their conference schedule, but they'll probably sneak their way into the playoff with Fernando Mendoza quarterback. But anyways, no more Indiana talk.
Probably will. Yeah. I think just going back to your question, I think when's the last time USC has had on paper going into a season a defense this good?
Good question, because it's been a long time. Obviously, you think back to those late 2000s defenses, which were fantastic, arguably some of the best ever. I'll say that. I don't think that's unfair to say that. I'm not going to compare these defenses to that because, those had like Clay Matthews, Brian Cushing, all those guys. That being said, there's a lot of talent on this team. I see a lot of players drafted from this team. We haven't seen that many people from USC drafted all that much in earlier rounds. Obviously, Caleb Williams, Jordan Addison, and then, Jalen Smith was a third rounder. Or wait, no, he was a second rounder.
He was third.
Late third. Am I remembering that? Yeah. He was a late third. What am I talking about? I think this is the year we could see Anthony Lucas. We could see Eric Gentry. Obviously, he's a little bit older, has injury problems. Eric Gentry, Kamari Ramsey for sure. I can see all those guys as day 1 through 2 picks.
Yeah. I want to ask you this too. USC's defense at this point last year, like a year ago right now, was people were high on it. Obviously, people were kind of like, okay, well, it was really bad in 23. You bring in a whole new coaching staff. What's it going to be like? But people were pretty high on it. And then it didn't end up being all that good. Where do you see this defense kind of stacking up compared to that of last year?
Is it unfair to say AA as good? I think obviously last year they were great, especially in comparison. I mean, throw that defense on the 2022 team, give them Caleb Williams, Jordan Addison. That's a CFP team. They're beating TCU at least, maybe even Michigan. But I digress. I would say it's a much better unit overall than last year, just talent-wise. Obviously, there's lots of guys who were there last year who we brought in. I think that's an argument that they will be so much better this year because those guys have been here even longer. I mean, they're just going to get better with time. Then you bring in obviously going back to the defensive line, you bring in 2 even better players on that line in Jarrett and Silver. No disrespect to Gavin Meyer. Yes, disrespect to Bear Alexander. But I think that they're much better. I think we're going to see a lot more pressures in the backfield. I think we're going to see a lot more tackles for loss. I think we're going to see a lot less explosive runs. Obviously, they did see a lot less explosive runs than years past. But I mean, I think to the Notre Dame game where Jeremiah Love. Yeah, Michigan, exactly. They lost that game because of the explosive runs. But I think they're going to be a lot better. I don't know what else to say to that. What about you?
I mean, yeah, I agree. I think personnel-wise, it's not that much different because we don't see that many transfers on the defense overall. We mentioned Keyshawn Silver, TJ Harvey's in that group, Bishop Fitzgerald, Jamal Jarrett. But again, I mean, I think it's a maturity thing. It's a strength thing. I mean, these are a lot of guys who are maturing from freshman to sophomore year. And I mean, again, it's also a year where you're coming off a season. There's a lot of new guys because there's a new coach. And so 100% agree. I think the development of these guys is crucial. If they don't capitalize on, the growth and development of these guys, that's where you're going to run into trouble. Even a guy like Kamari Ramsey, who's a veteran, you still want to develop him. He's still young. I completely agree. You want to stay healthy too. And that's hard to prevent, especially in football. But again, that was a big part of kind of the demise last year was the defensive injuries. I think there was one, against Rutgers, USC did not have maybe had one defensive starter that was healthy from the first game.
Really? I don't know. I don't know if I can fact check you on that.
I think like I
I'll
remember
take
seeing.
I'll take your word for it.
I remember. Well, it might have been in the middle of the game. I think someone went down, and USC was down to just because I think at that point Gentry was already hurt.
Yeah.
Like
I think Lucas was hurt by then too.
Lucas was hurt. Like I don't even remember who the rest were, but the point is a lot of that group was banged up, and again, it's going to be hard to prevent that because it's injuries and it's unpredictable. Yeah. But it goes to conditioning, right? Like USC is changing the direction of the strength, and the way strength is viewed, and so I think that's huge. And again, I mean, we've seen tweets these recent days of the Bloom facility and how much it's been able to progress.
I walked past it the other day. It looks pretty good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I keep forgetting you're like actually.
I'm back here. Yeah.
Yeah. So certainly can speak on that. Dato Field opening up soon, and I think that
not doing fantastic right now.
Yeah. So hopefully, that with the Bloom facility being open, they can focus a lot more on physicality and strength, and I think they have, but I think even more with the facilities. Yeah.
The last thing I want to bring up real quick. I mean, I just think we've talked about it a little bit. The defensive line, they have so much better athletes overall. Like just the wide range of athletes you have on the field. And that's obviously they're all athletes. But I mean from the big guys in the trench like Jarrett and Silver to the guys on the outside, Stewart, Lucas, they're all fantastic athletes and can do so much more than how they look and what their position's supposed to do. I think we could see a lot of, not with Jarrett and Silver, they're not going to rush the outside. But a lot of those guys could, they could switch inside, all sorts of that stuff, where I think it confused defenses because they're such great athletes, because the physicality of what USC is doing is just so much better.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you bring in guys in these past few years who didn't really know maybe the culture. And it just feels like now that's been established, with the recruiting pipeline we talked about. I mean, it all kind of comes together, the recruiting, the coaching staff, who they brought in. And so, yeah, I think completely agree. I think the athletes on this team are just a lot more seasoned and conditioned than we've seen in recent years. And I think that just goes back to the team focusing on, the trenches. It all starts in the trenches, right? So, yeah, it's huge.
Well, we're wrapping things up here. Leave us any comments right now before we tune out for the day. But Casey, I mean, this defense is going to be fantastic. I think it's really not hard to see that. It's not hard to say that they're easily a top 5 unit in the Big Ten, top 25, top 20 in the country. Or is it crazy to say that?
I don't think it's crazy. I mean,
it's a little easy to predict. It's a little hard to predict, right now. But they're a fantastic unit. If they make the CFP, it will be because of the defense. That defensive line, that's the anchor of it. We always talk about the trenches. That's the anchor. Casey, you got anything else?
No, I agree. I think it's certainly going to be pivotal in their run to, potential CFP bid. And I mean, the offense too is going to be, I think, very electric with, some of the best wideouts you can have. And again, a revitalized backfield. So I'm very excited just for coverage going forward.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap things up here. Tune in to Ethan and their show tomorrow. But until then, guys, we'll see you later and fight on.